Hi, I'm Wally Nichols, WRNicholsLaw.com, sponsor of GwinnettGunTrust.com, and welcome back for another discussion on Georgia's Stand Your Ground statutes and the use of deadly force as a justifiable response, a threat of great bodily harm, or to stop the commission of a forcible felony. As we discussed last week, we were reviewing McNeil versus State of Georgia. In that case, McNeil had contracted Epp to do some work at his home. Actually, they were constructing a home. Epp had actually contracted to construct two adjacent properties. One was owned by McNeil, one was owned by Sampson and Jones. Now, Sampson and Jones had used Epp a little bit ahead of McNeil, and had run into problems with him to the point that they had hired an attorney to write a letter and told Epp not to come back on their property, and if they did, he would be considered a trespasser. To thumb his nose at Sampson, Epp had brought a crew back by, a work crew, and Sampson came home and saw the men out there working on his property, again in violation of the termination of the contract. Ordered Epp to get him off, or he'd call the police. Epp told him, go ahead and call the police, and then he started screaming at the crew to get off the property and get the equipment and go. And then later, Epp had a confrontation, or perhaps earlier, but in another instance, Epp had a confrontation with Sampson's wife, Mrs. Jones, and she said that Epp behaved so bizarrely that he flailed his arms in the air in her face to the point that she was concerned that he was going to attack her, and that she was in fear for her life, or that he was going to inflict great bodily harm on her. So Sampson decided to carry a firearm on him at all times because of Epp's instability. So McNeil knows this and had a discussion. The McNeil family had a discussion with Sampson and Jones, who both told them to wrap up your business with this guy as fast as possible and get him out of your life. And that's what McNeil was trying to do when Epp was on the property again, wasn't really supposed to be there, but under the pretense of finishing up some work. McNeil's son, LaRon McNeil, had went out, told Epp to clear the property, get off the property, don't want him on there any longer, when LaRon testified that Epp pulled a knife on him and threatened to cut him with the knife. So LaRon went back in and called his father, who then called 911 and then came home. These are the critical facts, and this is the type of decision making that we want to talk about in a particular course. Here's what got McNeil in trouble. McNeil stated to the 911 operator, get the cops here as soon as you can because I may have to kick this guy's ass. He pulls his gun out of the glove compartment, puts a magazine in it, chambers around, is walking around his vehicle, and then confronts Epp. Now at this point, Epp's not on his property, but then walks onto his property. McNeil continues to go forward. There's loud voices and loud arguing for minutes, according to the eyewitness testimony. Then Epp starts coming after McNeil, who's yelling at him to stop, fires a warning round, still doesn't stop. Epp's coming at him closer and closer until finally McNeil fires a fatal round to Epp's head, mortally wounding him when Epp is within 3 feet distance of McNeil. So they were about to have a physical confrontation, arguably. Epp was found with a knife clipped inside his right pocket, his front pocket of his pants. That would logically explain why Epp's hands never left his side. But beyond all that, the Cobb County jury found that McNeil was the aggressor, and it's got to be because of not so much of the facts that Epp had his hands at his side, I think, but it's more probable because of the moments of contemplation and that McNeil is getting the firearm out, loading it, walking around the vehicle, coming up. Now we all know as gun owners that doesn't take a lot of time, but it was enough time for the Cobb County jury in that case to determine that that's when McNeil formed the intent to assault Epp. And Epp Epp came after him, wouldn't back off, and Epp ended up dead, but McNeil's life ended up ruined also. So in this case, McNeil made the decision to defend his property and his family, but he's now in prison. The same type of deal that Zimmerman chose to defend his life, arguably. No matter what your take is on the turnout of these two cases, the point is that McNeil's in the penitentiary for a long, long time, perhaps the rest of his life, and Zimmerman has a death threat hanging over him. No matter where he goes, he's scarred the rest of his life. The idea is to have a course to develop that muscle memory, so that we, just as rote of an activity is as loading and chambering the firearm, getting it to the ready, those moments of decision making that change the outcome for McNeil, those moments of decision making are when we need to be going through and have the script down in our mind exactly the right choices to make. So that's why we think that at W.R. Nichols Law, a good idea is to put together a course for everybody, you guys particularly, that talks about what those decisions should be in conjunction with the tactical use of the firearm. That's the fun part. But I think you'll find this part of the activity just as rewarding and fun and challenging, because we've got to go through these scenarios so that we're not making spur-of-the-moment decisions. We're going through conscious mental activity so that we know that we're making the right decisions for ourselves and for our families and for our property. McNeil could have come up and done a number of different things than what he did. While he was on the phone with the 911 operator, he could have stayed on the phone with the 911 operator. Epp was not on his property at that point. Epp later came back onto his property. I'm not saying anything that Epp did. Epp was a dangerous guy, clearly. But there are a number of different alternative courses of action that McNeil could have taken that would have ended up with McNeil perhaps not in prison today. And also a number of decisions that he could have made. Now, if we change the facts, if he stays in his car, if he stays in his vehicle, I think it was a pickup, and Epp charges the pickup, that changes the whole dynamic, arguably. If Epp could get it, if McNeil could have got into the house before Epp comes up, that changes the dynamic significantly. But that's not what happened. And so we need to go through these different scenarios in a controlled environment so that we know we're making good quality decisions, the best kind of decisions that we can make under the extreme pressure and stress of that time in those moments. And so that's why you need trained professionals to be there. It won't just be me, it'll be a team of professionals to look at different angles of these scenarios, and we can train ourselves to make good quality decisions so that we, if we're faced with those types of horrific life choices, we make the best one that we can at the time under the circumstances, so that we come out well ourselves, our families, and we can return to our families safe and whole and continue to have a good quality of life. Because at the end of the day, that's really why we're doing all this anyway. That's why we're defending ourselves, so that we can return home safely. Neither George Zimmerman returned home safely to his family that night, that fateful night in his case, and McNeil never returned home safely to his family in his case. We don't want to be those two guys. So that's what this course will be all about: how to make decisions and how to use firearms responsibly and in compliance with the law, so that we don't turn out to be those guys. All right, so until next time, remember, this is GwinnettGunTrust.com, sponsored by WRNicholsLaw.com, where we're protecting your rights and maintaining your trust.